the number one mistake that I see people make, where they leave that sense of connection to either chance or the audience. The good/bad news is that it's up to you as the speaker to take control of the room, to be in charge of that vibe. The audience will either try to rise to your level of energy and match it, or they're going to sink to your lack of energy, your lack of engagement, and your vibe of let's just get it over with.
Hello guys, today we are again at the Future of Skills in an interview that I have prepared a very special guest for you guys. No other than Nausheen Chen. Welcome, Nausheen.
Thank you so much, Nadia. It's such a pleasure being here. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too. I already love the vibe, right? In terms of the energy that we bring on and trying to make things happen. So to give you a flavor of our guest today, of the experience that Nausheen is bringing in, she has been a 3-time TEDx speaker. Nausheen is a public speaking instructor. Globally, her reputation has brought her over 500,000 followers across channels such as LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok.
Thank you so much for that lovely intro. I love that.
I have a feel for it, and I have a feel for, the discussion that we'll have today, because we did agree on the phone beforehand that it will be completely unscripted, completely clean, unscripted discussion, isn't it?
Yes.
We're going for it. Yeah. We're going for it. And Nausheen, usually, even though it's unscripted, we do have some traditional questions on the podcast that I'm absolutely keen myself to also find out a little bit more from your background. And that is, if you can please kindly describe yourself in 3 words of your choice that suit you best.
Rebellious.
Ooh, love that.
Expressive. In tune.
To that point, in terms of being in tune, because the way I frame my questions, they come up on the back of what the guest is happily ready to share, and you've shared the in tune. So let's dive into that. When it comes to the content that you post online, and when it comes to your experience in public speaking, what triggers your attention more so? What inspires you to talk more about? What type of topics?
My love for public speaking started at a very young age, when I wasn't even sure that this is what I was doing. But that annoying kid that would always stand in front of the entire family and recite the most boring poem ever. I used to be that annoying kid.
Right.
From a very young age, I realized that being in that space where you're performing, especially on a stage in the spotlight, it gets you taken seriously. And for me, as a young adult, that was rare. I was adopted, so I grew up with people that were decades older than me. I was adopted at a very late age by my parents. So the only way for me to be taken seriously was to have this spotlight. That's the only time I felt like, wow, everyone actually listens to me. And I loved that feeling of being taken seriously. So when I started speaking in public, first it was on the radio, then it was as a communication skills trainer, then it was doing trainings in whatever I was doing at the time. Because in a past life, I was a filmmaker, so I was doing trainings on public speaking. I was doing trainings on filming. I was doing trainings on storytelling. So it's like I have a very deep connection with the art form of public speaking. And over 17 years, I've lost count of how many hundreds of stages I've spoken at, from neighborhood coffee shops, storytelling events, all the way to the TEDx stage. So I wouldn't say that there's a specific topic. It's just that I love the art of public speaking. I love creating an experience with a live audience in front of me and having that conversation.
How interesting. You've given me a lot of context here. Thank you so much. Obviously, your background and where you've started from, being someone who has first this vibe and curiosity to find out a little bit more about what's happening around you, but also immerse yourself in what you said yourself, the art of filmmaking, right? The context of how you present yourself on the stage and that connection that you later on will have with your live audience. Let's talk about that in terms of your connection with your live audience, in terms of what sparks that connection and keeps it active, because I've seen tons of expressions on the stage whereby there's a speaker, but then there are people in the audience who sometimes they are attracted to what we have here, right? Mm-hmm. And their attention slips. It's no longer with the person on the stage. So how do you make sure that that connection stays? Because that's quite an art in itself.
It's completely up to you as the speaker. This is the number one mistake that I see people make, where they leave that sense of connection to either chance or the audience. The good/bad news is that it's up to you as the speaker to take control of the room, to be in charge of that vibe. The audience will either try to rise to your level of energy and match it, or they're going to sink to your lack of energy, your lack of engagement, and your vibe of let's just get it over with. So
Right.
the idea here is, yes, it is about you as the speaker in the room, taking control of the room, understanding how do I engage this audience? And there's no one size fits all, because a large audience at a public event, for example, is going to be very different from an audience of 30 people in a boardroom. You have to understand what are the techniques that I can use to engage these audiences. How can I ask them questions? How can I create variety in the content that I'm sharing so that it doesn't become repetitive? And
Right.
that in itself is engaging. How do I use my voice, my energy, my body language to create this experience, to really show them that I'm not just here delivering information. I'm not a PowerPoint delivery person, which is unfortunately a lot of people in this moment. But I'm really here to create this experience with you and for you. And the PowerPoint is just a tool that I'm using.
Got it. Again, you've given me some context, and it's quite diverse in a sense that it's a lot to pick up on and build upon. So thank you for doing that. What I understand from what you just shared is that when you're saying that the control is with the speaker and he chooses, be it or she chooses, be it to land it on a level of frequency that you would want to be matched, or rather be seen fully transparently that your energy is not there, and so it's whatever content that might be probably will be seen by your audience, because they might be the scanner of that level of energy, right? So how important it is, the content itself versus the delivery, and the delivery, I mean the level of energy beneath it or within it. And can you train that as well? Because, there's always this element of anxiety I'm finding with a lot of people, including myself, when it comes to, every single challenge of speaking in front of an audience. There's always this element of nuisance that comes alongside, and you're wondering, do I know enough about the audience? Or, probably the content might be there, but the audience is always new. So that gives you that element of anxiety. How to overcome it? 3 questions in one. There you go.
So this skill is absolutely trainable. I work
Excellent.
with a lot of introverts, for example, who ask me, Nausheen, I'm not an extrovert. I don't want to be the loudest voice in the room. I don't want to put on a mask. I don't want to perform. How can I be impactful? It's absolutely possible as an introvert, extrovert, ambivert, whatever personality type you are, to be powerful and impactful on that stage or on camera or in person when you're delivering something in a boardroom. You asked about how much weight should we give to the message versus delivery. So for me, it's a 3-parter. So it's a trifecta between your message, your delivery skills, and also your confidence, because you touched upon that in terms of the nerves. So if you really think about it as intersecting sets where you have the confidence, and really we're talking about both outer but also inner confidence. We're talking about how you're going to structure your message.
Yep.
What kind of language are you going to use? How are you going to make sure that you're not rambling? How are you going to make sure that you're not using filler words like like, that you're not using qualifying language? Like, does that make sense? For example, do you know what I mean? To be honest, those are all weak qualifying phrases. Just kind of, not really.
I see.
So all of that falls within how you're structuring your message, how you're preparing your message. And then, of course, delivery skills, where you want to make sure that you're playing with your voice, where you're adding in variation. You're not just showing up in a flat monotone, where you're showing up with energy, where you're not just have the same energy as you would have when you're typing out an email, because that's not being amplified and powerful. and how do you use your body language? So it's really that magic trifecta. And at the center are what I call top 1% communicators who've really mastered the art of structuring the message the right way, of delivering it in the most impactful and relevant way to the audience, and really being able to work with their inner nerves, conquer them, make them work for you instead of against you.
Woo, thank you. An amazing answer, by the way, already gives you ammunition as a listener to understand that it's a skill that can be trained. And there are 3 facets to it that you've quite rightly mentioned. So we will dive into those as we go along. Are there any traits how you would recognize a number 1 speaker, be it by, I would not want to introduce any ingredients before you would do. So how about we get it from yourself in terms of, let us know, how do you see a public speaker without him or she even opening their mouth first?
It all comes down to the audience. The audience is the litmus test. So if you are the one, for example, watching a TEDx talk, or if you are in a live audience with someone on stage, if you are listening to a podcast, if you're watching a YouTube video, that's also public speaking. How long are you engaged for? And you asked specifically about how do you know this is a top 1% communicator before they even open their mouth? Yes and no. You can have an inkling of, yes, this person seems to be in tune and ready to go, but they have to open their mouth. There's this myth that body language is 70% of the message.
That's exactly where I'm going into.
It's been debunked.
Tell me more.
It's been debunked. It's been challenged because it was done with a very limited data set.
Right.
And yes, body language is important. No communication expert will ever argue with that. Of course, the way that you're using your gestures, if you're using open gestures versus closed gestures, if I was just sitting here wringing my hands the whole time, A, it would be distracting. B, you would feel like, is this person okay? How anxious are they? If I was sitting here with my hands always hidden, after a while, especially if it's like this, after a while, you would feel like, what is she hiding? What's going on? Because a lot of this is linked to how we perceived threats when we lived in caveman times.
I see.
At that point, body language played a huge part. When you met someone new, a stranger, if you couldn't see their hands, if they were hidden behind their back, they could be hiding a weapon. They could attack you. But if you saw them with open palms, extended towards you especially, it was a signal of, I'm your friend. You can trust me. I don't have anything to hide. So a lot of body language is linked to how we perceived threat and how we perceived safety all the way back. It's linked to our lizard brain. That's where eye contact comes in, for example. That's where open versus closed gestures come in. But there's only one side of the story that body language can tell. So you absolutely need to open your mouth to prove whether or not you can engage with the audience. That said, it's not just about the words. Once you open your mouth, once you start the talk or the podcast or the YouTube video, it's also about playing with silence as you go along. Which is something that a lot of people don't do because they don't give their mouths permission to actually pause. So there's a lot that you can do with pauses and with silence, but you have to open your mouth. You have to start speaking to prove whether or not you're going to engage the audience or not.
I see. So you have to be a bit more of an all-rounder when it comes to paying attention to the signals, isn't it? And at the same time, curious of this aspect of your coaching in this sense, right? Because obviously as a public speaking coaching element that you're bringing to experience, you have this inkling, as you said yourself, into seeing the person and then trying to find out what are some of the quicker wins that you can apply from your experience to help them, right? What are some of the most common issues people are coming to see your guidance on when it comes to public speaking?
Yes, so I work with both entrepreneurs, founders, but also execs, people that are very much in the corporate world and for whom their speaking skills are standing between them and success. And overall, if you look at it psychologically, I work with 2 types of people.
Yep.
The first type, their challenge very, very often is the nerves. So these are people that are typically not used to being in the spotlight. They never feel comfortable when the spotlight is on them. They hesitate speaking up in meetings. They hesitate saying yes to speaking opportunities. In fact, they're usually turning them down, thinking, I'm not ready, I'm not the right person. And that really blocks their visibility. They stay invisible, whether they are in the workplace or whether they are founders who are hiding behind the keyboard, who are creating LinkedIn posts, but not really going a step beyond and doing podcasts like this one, doing LinkedIn Lives, doing videos, going on stages. You cannot become a thought leader that way. You cannot become a thought leader by hiding behind a keyboard. So you really put a ceiling to your own growth that way. But it's the nerves. It's that feeling of, I have to be perfect and I am not perfect, so I will not show myself to the world till I'm perfect. And a lot of these people just feel crippling stage fright or camera fright that they've never really worked on. It's something that you can absolutely solve. You can absolutely resolve it, but you have to put in the work. So that's the first type of client that I work with. The second type have no confidence issues. They don't feel stage fright. They're very much okay with saying yes to podcasts and doing videos, doing presentations in front of senior management. They're fine, but they're average. They're mediocre. So they go into a room, they present, and immediately they're forgotten.
I see.
They're speaking up in meetings, but people aren't listening to them. They're not buying into
They're
their
scrolling, yeah.
opinions. Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of presentation you've seen.
Yeah.
So with them, the challenge is, how do we get you to work on both your strengths and opportunities to make you really rise above, to make you that top 1% communicator? And a lot of people have that potential, but they just don't know where to start because they've never actually worked on their communication skills.
How interesting. I'd never actually thought that way in a sense of, to me, it was always that case of, if you're into something, you would pursue it, you would try and find, it's almost like a solution to a problem, right? But when it comes to seeing it from both stances, as a person who has the nerves and a little bit more like, put on the side from that perspective, or puts him or herself on the side from that perspective, right? But the others are probably totally fine with facing, stakeholders and having that conversation. But it's the how and how it lands that lacks, isn't it? Because the scrolling element is very powerful these days. The attention span is seconds, right? So we'd better be very careful about how do we land that message that it gets actually some echoing along the side, right? As opposed to eclipsing. So when it comes to the techniques that I know that this is only an hour that we have at our hands, so I'm not expecting to get the secrets of every single element of the technique, but what do you think helps most to address both the anxiety and the nerves, and then at the same time make the delivery very engaging, if it's just very simple techniques that you can share?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a story here.
Please. Love stories.
Once I was approached by the CEO and their team. They were a very successful company. In fact, they were looking to do an exit. So they were preparing for these investor presentations. They had a great story to tell. Their messaging was great. They had the numbers to prove it. So really a very, very strong case. But the entire C-suite had to present in these investor meetings, and they were not powerful communicators. They would start reading from the slides. They would mumble. They wouldn't make an effort to connect with the audience. They were very much in PowerPoint delivery person mode. So we started running through these presentations, and I knew that then what they're doing is they're leaving it up to the investor to be interested. Of course, some investors will look at the deck and they'll look at the numbers and they'll be interested regardless of the communication skills. But then you're leaving it up to chance. And then why do you even need to be there to present? You can send that as an email. The fact that you're taking your entire C-suite and you're presenting this story, this case to investors, you want to make sure that they're equally impressed with you as communicators. So we kept the messaging pretty much the same. I did work with them on weaving in more storytelling and making their sentences shorter, making it overall more engaging. But we really focused on their delivery skills. So that's where it comes to mastering your voice. So very often we speak in a very limited number of tones. Our voice is capable of a lot of different pitches. You can go high to express excitement. You can go low to express drama and gravitas, introduce suspense. Most people don't bother because we're lazy. We're lazy as communicators. So we stick to monotones. You're always basically speaking like this almost all the time and not really introducing variety.
Can't agree more.
Right? So just that bit of introduction of variety, adding emphasis to highlight words, adding pauses, making sure you're enunciating, making sure that you're not just mumbling and eating up your words. That makes a huge difference. It makes the other person, the audience, sit up and pay attention, because every single time you emphasize a word, every single time you enunciate, the signal that you're sending is, my message is so important that I want you to be able to understand every single word that I'm saying. Then we worked on their energy. These were crazy busy execs, which means that they were just rushing from one meeting to the other to the other. But to really create an impactful experience in high stakes conversations and presentations, you have to step into a different zone. You have to make yourself tap into a higher energy bracket, because when you project energy, the audience responds with energy. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're going in with the same energy of, wow, we are exhausted, we've just come from 5 different meetings, we have to just get this one over with, the audience will know. They'll understand that this is an exhausted team. Do you want to take on an exhausted team as part of your portfolio? Maybe not. So you have to make sure that you're showing up with the right level of energy. And I do want to have a caveat here and say that a lot of introverts feel overwhelmed with this aspect, because they feel that, Nausheen, I don't want to be like Tony Robbins. And that's not what we want. We don't want you to project fake energy, because that again is readable. So if I was sitting here, for example, Nadia, and if I said, yeah, Nadia, let's go. All right.
You frightened me.
Exactly. You would feel like, what is up with this person? Are they on crack? What's going on? So it's about matching the audience's energy and then adding a little more, just that smidge more, that shows that you are energized and you're really passionate about your subject matter, which is usually the case with experts, with founders, with entrepreneurs, with C-suite. They are extremely passionate about their subject matter, but they don't bring that passion to the surface. So we've talked about the voice, we've talked about the energy, and the last piece is body language. A lot of times, people are so preoccupied with the message that they forget what their body is doing. But the truth is, your body needs to be in coherence with your message. Very often, people will talk about things that, again, they are passionate about with a poker face. So
that doesn't stick either.
Exactly. So if I tell you, I had so much fun yesterday, it was the best time, you're going to feel like I'm lying. Why is my face not saying what my words are?
Or maybe that you're joking.
Exactly. Or that I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But very often these execs or these leaders, they mean the words that they're saying. They're not being sarcastic and they're not lying, but they're just forgetting to be expressive with their face, with their body. So all of this ties back to intentionality. And I always tell my clients the journey that we're about to embark on is one that's going to take you from a speaker on autopilot, which is what most people are most of their lives, to an intentional speaker. So if you're intentional about your message, about your delivery, about building your confidence, you're absolutely going to win.
How exciting. Again, thank you for giving me the caveats to tap into and form some other questions on the back of this. Very curious here. And again, probably because you've been so expressive with giving me examples on the go with, this poker face and with the tonality of the voice alongside that doesn't express the message by no means of a doubt. How would you ask what type of exercises, even if there's just short exercises that you would give to that high-end executive that has a poker face with no expression to kind of try and match that message to the expression on the face? Is there anything that you can give?
Oh, for sure. There are a number of tools that we use. First, the very first thing I set up is a practice habit, because that is the absolute best way to improve. And it's the one thing most people don't do because it's unglamorous. It's like going to the gym and working out. You want the muscles, but you don't want to put in the work. So setting up that practice habit is something we do from day one, where the process is really simple. You speak about something that you're very comfortable speaking about. So, for example, an FAQ that you get all the time, and you record yourself and then watch it back. In fact, if you're using an AI platform to record yourself, even better, because you get some data and analytics on how fast you're speaking, how many filler words you're using, whether you're making eye contact or not. You'd watch it back, and that's where I coach and guide my clients on what to look out for. This very often is very cringy for a lot of people. They hate watching themselves back because it holds up a mirror. And sometimes you don't like what you see in the mirror. But just like any other exercise in front of the mirror, if you don't like what you see, you aim to fix it, or you aim to live with it. The good news is, with communication skills, you don't need to live with anything. You really can fix everything. You don't need plastic surgery either. So
Love the humor. Thank you.
So the idea is that you set up that practice habit. That's really step number one for everyone. And then specifically for people that have a poker face, like you asked, we have a number of exercises. One is we look at the 5 to 7 basic human emotions. So happiness, sadness, surprise, disgust, anger, contempt. And I show them charts. I show them how these expressions are manifested on the faces of different people. And then we do this fun exercise where I name the emotion and I show the emotion on my face and I ask them to follow me. So I'm happy. I'm so happy. I'm sad. So sad. What a surprise. And it's really silly and it takes you out of your head. But what it also does is that it sends your brain a signal that I want my face to be more expressive. So you can actually use this as a warm-up exercise as well. And for some of my clients, they actually print out these expression charts and they tape them to their computer. And when they get 5 minutes in between meetings, they do that exercise. And it really helps in moving them along that journey from autopilot to intentional. The good news is, with body language and with expressions, I've noticed through my experience that it's actually not that difficult to change the way your body and your expressions work. You just need to be intentional. You just need to give your brain that signal that now this is the mode I want you to be in. A bit more expressive, a bit more on the surface. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, aim to express it with your body and with your face.
How interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. Obviously, there are, as you say, it's a form of art, but it comes underpinned from this various sets of techniques and exercises that are embedded in, now you're saying, the habits of, right? Because they need to keep going and doing that. With regards to the speed of seeing the initial results, how soon do some, after, taking the exercises with you or taking the coaching or doing some self-work as well in their leisure time, how quickly can they see initial results, would you say?
This is actually very surprising for my clients, how quickly they see results. For context, we are working on deconditioning decades of speaking habits because you've learned, picked up the way that you speak, the way that you express yourself from the moment you started to learn to speak.
Yeah.
And since then, it's really been a journey on autopilot. You've absorbed the way that your teachers spoke to you. You've absorbed the way you've seen friends, family, your parents speak. And so it's been a journey that's been shaped very much by the environment and not by intention, to the point where you start working on your communication skills by intention. So it's really decades of conditioning that we're aiming to undo. Of course, not completely, because also very often people aren't aware of their strengths. They always come to me and say, Nausheen, I'm weak in this and I'm weak in this and I think I need to fix this. But the truth is, the closest distance, the shortest distance between where you are and gaining an exceptional level in something has to be your strength. What you're already strong in. If we work on building that, first making you aware and then building on that, that's how you can push yourself to that exceptional level. So in terms of the time, most of my coaching programs start with a 2-month commitment. And within those 2 months, people see results. And I've noticed between the 6th and the 7th sessions, there is a light bulb moment. There is this moment where they realize, wow, I'm showing up differently. That's also the time where a lot of my clients get unsolicited positive feedback. So they get messages from their colleagues, their peers, saying, wow, you're doing something different. What's going on? You're showing up differently. I see something different happening. That is, like I said, the best litmus test. When other people notice that you're doing something differently, that means something's working, especially if they're giving you positive feedback.
Can't agree more. Is the word of mouth element, isn't it? People say without you even portraying yourself deliberately to say that, hey, I am a good public speaker now. It's not you saying, it's them saying it for you, isn't it? That's what's counting more than, I suppose, the advertising itself in whichever form that might be. You've mentioned the element of the strength and building up on it first. Again, can't agree more. It's also the quick win that you're leveraging from that experience, isn't it? It's the lower hanging fruit, as we would call it. How are you doing in the sense of how are you trying to source to see what their strongest skills are? Are there any particular exercises as well, or is it some form of a task that they do? How does it work?
Yes, absolutely. This is actually what we start with at step 0. So the moment I start working with the client, the very first thing I do is have them do a self-evaluation where they have a number of questions in a questionnaire that I've designed, and they evaluate themselves based on how confident do you feel before a big meeting or a big presentation? How many filler words do you feel that you use? What are the qualities that you want to associate with yourself, and how far along do you feel that you are on those qualities? And so they fill out the self-evaluation questionnaire. And I also have them do an anonymous peer survey of their communication skills. Now, this is scary. A lot of people feel hesitant at actually getting that feedback because most people have never gotten that feedback before. They've never asked people, how do I come across as a communicator? But this is where the gold is, because the moment you send that out and get feedback from 15 to 20 people, you start seeing patterns. So in our very first session, we go through the self-evaluation and the anonymous peer survey. And there are so many insights that they get just from doing that exercise, where they realize, wow, there are things that I felt that I wasn't super strong in. And that's exactly what people are saying. In a way, that's good news because it means there's no disconnect. And of course, the bad/challenging news there is that we have to work on it, because that is absolutely a challenge for you. Very often it will be things like, this person could be more engaging. Sometimes they speak in a monotone. Sometimes I feel that they're nervous. So it's really perceptions and opinions that people don't share with you unless you ask. But you'd be surprised at how open and honest people can be with their feedback once you ask them, especially people that you trust. So it's a great exercise that also helps us set goals for the rest of the coaching program.
Thank you. Like I was saying earlier, just meanwhile while you're sharing this, it's golden piece, isn't it? Knowing that that element of pattern that surfaces when more people are sharing almost the same sort of trend for you that you can build up on. That's amazing. That's that kind of, almost like a guidance, almost like having to choose from various directions, and they're pointing, go there first, try that first, and then see how it goes, isn't it? That's amazing. Love that. Thank you. You've mentioned also this element of the strength of the voice, of course, the tonality, how you come across, and then how it then matches your face expression, and then the behaviorals. What are any exercises out there that you might recommend for the voice itself initially? Because, you've matched and mentioned earlier a very interesting point regarding the audience, right? And the surroundings where you're in. Obviously, when you are in front of the investors, in front of the people who are the higher decision makers that you need to convince in one way or another, there's one element of the awareness that you're being in tune with, but there's also the element of trying to be aware of your own inner state so that you're being almost a realistic expressionist in that sense. So are there any particular exercises, I believe, that are more for the awareness element, so that you know how to scan the room and to better tune in into the environment without losing your inner authenticity along the side?
First, I love that phrase, realistic expressionist. That's a very cool phrase. I love that. So you were asking first about the voice, but then you're also asking about how can you be more in tune with the audience without losing that sense of where I am in my presentation, without losing that structure.
Yep.
It's about building your presence. So because I come from a filmmaking background, I always share this analogy with my coaches and my clients. Imagine a film set where you have three primary roles. You have the performer.
Yep.
You have the scriptwriter who has to provide the words, and you have the director who has to evaluate the performance. Now imagine the scriptwriter writes the script, gives it to the actor, and this actor/performer takes the words and is in the middle of rehearsing and saying them out loud, while the scriptwriter comes and taps them on the shoulder and says, no, say it this way. No, not that joke, another joke. No, wait, try these words instead. And the director keeps yelling, "Cut, that was awful. Cut, what are you even thinking? Cut, where did you learn acting?" Do you feel that the actor in that scenario will be able to deliver the best performance of their lives?
Probably not.
It's impossible. We, as communicators, play those three roles simultaneously. But now that we understand that for our performer to be able to perform and communicate with precision, clarity, and impact, we cannot do it when the scriptwriter and the director, which in our case would be the part of our brain that gives us the message and the part of our brain that is the inner critic evaluating our performance, if we know that while they are speaking and interrupting us, we cannot deliver the best performance, what would you naturally gravitate to? What is the solution? To somehow put those voices on mute, on pause. It is easier said than done, but it's absolutely possible.
I was just about to put that in.
Yes, it is. The principle is correct, and then it takes a few weeks to a few months to develop that level of presence. But the greatest, most impactful speakers of our time are the ones who have mastered the art of being 100% present in the conversation, on stage, on camera, whichever room you put them in. They are going to put their inner scriptwriter or rewriter on pause after they've delivered the message. So it's about creating that trust with your brain that it's going to deliver the best words to me. I don't need to second guess myself. The moment you do that, you're in your head. You're not there present with the audience.
You're wasting your energy elsewhere.
Exactly.
Right.
The same with the inner critic. Of course, your inner critic wants to interject. The idea is to put them on pause and say, just like that director, the best way for the director to be effective is to let the performer do the whole take and then watch it back. And then point out, I liked what you did here, and maybe you can try another way of doing that. Then you do another take. For us in real life, it means making sure that the next time you present, you take the lessons from the previous time and enhance and improve. That's a step most people don't take because, again, it's unglamorous. You're just jumping from one speaking opportunity to the next to the next. So if you can work on developing that presence, which is what I work with my clients on, in the moment, don't let the rewriter interrupt. Don't let the inner critic interrupt. Tell them, I'm not silencing you. I'm just putting you on pause because you have vital roles to serve, but not in the moment where performance is critical. That's how you develop a charming, charismatic, magnetic presence.
Almost feels like you would add another element to it and just say, let it go, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, in the moment for sure. Because the idea is, of course, to also learn and improve every single time.
Yeah. But as you said earlier, it's being in the flow, being aware that you are in the flow mode. You can rewire it later on and refer back to your critics and the other energizer in your brain. But meanwhile, whilst you're there, just letting it go, making sure that you allow almost yourself to experience that experience, right? And that's golden, I find, because when you are in the moment, or as they say, to be present, your full energy, your full attention goes into that stream, right? So therefore that's the phrase of giving it your best, right? It's how you do it, by giving your energy in the right place, not splitting it all over. That, again, I find it personally, being in an environment where you've got so many commitments that are surrounding you as an individual, and at the same time, how do you make sure that you're not splitting your attention and that you live the moment, or allow yourself to live the moment, when you know that so many other things are surrounding your, or trying to get a piece of your attention meanwhile? There might be some exercises. I wonder if there are they?
For sure.
Oh, okay.
For sure. The best way to do this is to develop a warm-up routine, which serves many purposes. The very first thing it does is that when you are about to enter a high-stakes conversation or a presentation or even creating videos, create a separation between the last thing that you were doing and this next thing. And the warm-up routine fits very nicely in the middle. And it doesn't need to be very long. It could be a 5-minute routine. But the very first thing it does is it creates that psychological break from whatever you were doing before. It lets you close that chapter, or at least, again, put it on pause and say, now I'm entering another mode. And then, of course, creating that warm-up routine, making sure that that warm-up routine works for you, that's essential. So you can do physical warm-ups, you can do vocal warm-ups, you can do expression warm-ups, you can incorporate singing, dancing. Tony Robbins famously jumps on a trampoline before he goes on stage.
You didn't know that?
A lot of people have an anthem that they dance to and they sing. Whatever calms your nerves and puts you in a higher energy bracket. The warm-up routine has to serve those two purposes, especially if you are someone who gets a lot of nerves, who gets anxiety. Some people meditate or do deep breathing or go for a walk, a short walk. Some people make sure they grab a favorite beverage. Right before the podcast, you noticed I asked for some water.
Yeah.
I cannot go into any speaking engagement without water. I need to always hydrate my throat, and it also gives me a great excuse to make sure that I'm breathing, that I'm pausing, that I'm hydrating. Whatever that routine is, I help clients build a routine for themselves based on what's working for them. We try out a whole bunch of techniques and we really customize this routine so that A, it's really dialed in. You don't need to spend 15 minutes. It's a tight 5 minutes. And B, it's really effective. All the things that you do in those 5 minutes are super effective in getting you to the place that you want to be at the moment you start speaking. And that is the absolute best way to enter that zone, that amplified version of you where you're turning yourself on and you're like, let's go, it's showtime.
Wow. We've literally just made this nice transition into saying there's showtime. It's like almost introducing the listener into this whole element. I had some other question prepared, to be honest, not about the showtime, but you've incentivized me now to think about a question regarding the showtime, because it is so sort of inspirational now, right? Talking about the moment and what sticks in that moment. Let me frame a question, literally real time, on the spot now, about that moment. What do you think might be the best question to be asked about that first, and then I have my question after. About the moment.
The best question to ask about the moment would be, how do you make sure that you're not being fake? That is the number one concern I get from my clients, the number one pushback.
Wasn't on my head at the moment, but yeah, okay, I'll let you do that, yeah.
Because what happens after that moment? You enter the high energy performance zone. And this word, performance, gets a really bad rap.
It
because people think, oh, you're performing, you're being fake, you're not being authentic. This is BS. It's really not accurate. It's really not what's going to strengthen you as a communicator, because there's no such thing as authenticity. You are not one-dimensional. You contain multitudes. You have an authentic version of yourself with your parents, with your partner, with me, with your friends. They're all different shades of Nadia. You can't pick one version and say, that's the authentic me. So all that moment is doing, that moment is getting you to a part of you that you may not have explored yet. It's creating that version of you that you can step into anytime that you want to be powerful and impactful in the spotlight. And it's absolutely you. You're not putting on a mask or a persona, unless, of course, you are faking it. But with my clients, the work that we do is actually in working first inwards, pulling out things that they connect with, whether it's storytelling, whether it's figuring out how to show passion for something they are passionate about, not faking it, and then working on creating that version of themselves that is going to emerge after that moment.
How interesting. So it's almost like allowing yourself to be discovered, and making sure that you then tap more into that new, I wouldn't say personality of you, but more of a new facet of you, a new expression of you. When you're there, everything needs to almost silence. Everything needs to go away. It's just you in that moment. Wow, that's almost magical. By the nature of that moment, were there any particular techniques or skills that you have built within yourself that you have found that you had a need for in order to be built, like a gap almost, and then that you felt that you need to tune in to be able to develop more of?
For me, it starts and ends with the audience, especially in live environments, but also on video. This is something that we haven't talked about a lot, but a lot of people who seem to derive their energy from that live audience, that interaction, seeing nodding heads and friendly faces, that element is missing on video, but it is still very audience oriented. Right now, we're talking, but we're thinking of this imaginary audience that is not going to be imaginary the moment this is out into the world. So for me, that moment is entirely about the audience. It's about me being present, making that connection with the audience before I even say a single word. Back to one of your earlier questions when you asked, what do you do, or how can you tell that someone is impactful before they open their mouth? For me, my goal is to be impactful by walking onto the stage with quiet, calm confidence. I'm not in a hurry to start speaking. I'm not in a hurry to just get to the podium or get to my phone. The idea is to project and to feel that level of calm reassuredness where I stand, I get to the center of the stage, I look at the audience, I let them look at me, we share this moment, and then I start speaking. And just that moment of connection is something that extends through the whole conversation, because they feel that this person is here to actually speak to me, not to just talk at me, not just to deliver a one-way lecture, which a lot of people do. You can use that same moment on camera or on video where you take a moment to really remind yourself who's going to be watching. In my early days as a content creator, I would miss that energy because I really do come alive when I see people in front of me and I can talk to them and engage with them. And when it's me and my camera, it was a challenge in the past to create the same level of relationship with the camera. But I started visualizing the person at the other end. I started visualizing someone like you watching that video on their phone. And that's who I was talking to, not to the camera. The camera was just a tool. So how do I make sure that I start the video on that high energy with complete engagement and presence so that the person watching gets hooked? So it's really all about the audience, how you're playing with them, how you're perceiving them, and how they're perceiving you.
Love that, because I think listening to you now, it transpires that a lot of time when you are mostly driven by the interaction with the camera as opposed to the person behind the camera is where that magic might get lost in the way, isn't it? Because if you're, as you say yourself, trying to imagine that person behind the camera is where the release of this magical element comes into force. It's when you're allowing yourself to bring that energy into the conversation. Wow, that's hard work.
It is. It's not easy, but it's absolutely doable. Once I worked with this brilliant entrepreneur. She was the CEO of her own airfield company. So very impressive. But she was so scared of being on camera. She knew that that was the next step for her because she was already creating content on LinkedIn. And she knew that there were a lot of stakeholders that were present on LinkedIn. She was constantly going to networking events, for example, and people were connecting with her on LinkedIn. So she knew the right people were following her and watching, but she felt so hesitant, almost paralyzed to actually share more of herself, more of her experience. And it came down to her relationship with the camera. The camera was this cold, unfeeling, judging beast that she felt she had to grapple with. But the moment we changed it and we turned it into a tool and we got her thinking about the final stakeholder who was listening, whether it was an investor, or whether it was someone that she could collaborate with to expand her business, when we changed that relationship and we made her think about that person who's going to be watching, it completely transformed. She no longer felt like the camera was judging her because the audience is not judging her. This is a very common misconception that people have that does paralyze them when they feel that, oh my God, the audience is going to think I'm stupid. Oh, they're going to think I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, they're going to disagree with something I say and that's going to be the end of it. But really, everyone is selfish, and that works for you because they are just there to get value. Whether it's an investor who wants to ask a deep, hard question about something to do with your company's growth and numbers, or whether it's a potential collaborator who's looking at you and trying to understand how is this person going to be as a long-term partner. So they're just looking to get information, and that really lowers the stakes. Then all you have to do is share what you know. So transforming that relationship was really at the core of getting her to emerge from her shell. And when she did, she started posting videos consistently on LinkedIn. She got attention from the right industry stakeholders. She got invited to even more events, to even more meetings and rooms that she wasn't a part of before. Ended up expanding her business to 3 new states and bringing in 10x more revenue.
Impressive.
Just the magic of emerging from your shell.
How exciting. Thank you for sharing. It's quite a story, right? And we're viewing the actual person as the storyteller himself, the one who's appearing on the stage. It feels that we've opened up so many avenues for conversation in terms of exploring who the viewer is, who the audience is, and how to better energize them. At the same time, how to get the public speaking skills in such a shape that they will get this magical element within the journey. But at the same time, knowing yourself. And I love what you said about there's no such thing as authenticity, because ultimately we are in a framework of building ourselves all the time at every single step of the way in our evolution, as long as we're not just accelerating and not evaluating, right? The involvement of it. So with that in mind, what I'd love to hear from you, Nausheen, from everything that we've discussed so far, I know we're wrapping up at the minute, but it would be really useful to understand from your perspective. If there is one thing or two in your journey that has formed you so far that when looking back, you'd say, oh, without these moments in my life, this part of me hasn't had a chance to surface, A, and B, any particular skills that you've built along the way yourself that you might have realized without those, I wouldn't have been here.
Oh, for sure. There are 3 moments that I can think of. The first one was when I was a young graduate. I had entered the corporate world, in the Fortune 500 world. So there were a lot of high stakes. And this was my second day as a young graduate, a young 20-something. I was asked to present in front of an agency. And this was back at Procter & Gamble. So again, the stakes were high. I had just stepped into this role. I didn't know much. But I was coming with some sense of confidence in my public speaking skills, so I didn't feel nervous. I did go in and I did do the presentation. And afterwards, my boss said, that went okay, but what the heck was going on with your hands? And this was me. And this is very common because when you do feel anxious, but you are still performing, you need to dissipate that anxious energy. And at that point, I wasn't as aware of my body language. This is the case for, if you remember, we talked about the two types of people I work with. I was very much the second type. I didn't have the nerves, but I was not an exceptional speaker. I was going in sometimes with false confidence or with too much confidence. So that was the very first event that shaped how I looked at communication skills. I started looking at it more in terms of something I have to build intentionally. Till that point, it was a passion. It was a hobby. It was something I loved doing, but I didn't pursue it. The second point was very much my first TEDx talk. This was a huge dream. For a long time, I pitched to TEDx. I was really looking forward to this. I got the acceptance. I felt 5 seconds of pure joy, followed by days and weeks of dread, because I started feeling the imposter syndrome at that point. I started thinking, what did I just sign up for? Did I just sign up for public humiliation on this big stage? Did they have the wrong person? Should I even be on this stage? Who am I to be on this stage? And in the days leading up to the TEDx talk, my husband asked me, Nausheen, what do you tell clients when they have the same issue with nerves? And I told him, well, I asked them to reframe their nerves because really your body produces the same reaction to being nervous and being excited. So if you can reframe those nerves as I'm just feeling excited, it changes everything from something negative to something positive. And he looked at me and he said, so do that for yourself. So that was a light bulb moment where I realized that, of course, when the stakes are high, I am going to feel nervous. I don't feel nervous going into wonderful podcast conversations like this where I'm very excited. I don't feel nervous going and presenting to audiences. But when the stakes are high, every communicator feels nervous. So understanding that about yourself, coming to terms with it, and making your nerves work for you instead of against you. That was a key lesson that I learned just because of TEDx. And the third piece was absolutely when I started coaching people. Because so far in life, this was my passion. I did public speaking as a hobby, as something that I just felt so connected with and it made me feel alive. I hadn't until that point thought I could do this for a living. I was doing everything else for a living, but not public speaking coaching. And that's when I realized I need to look back critically at all the things that I've learned without realizing I'm learning them, because I really took the long way around. I was speaking in public for 17 years. And that journey of looking back at what I had picked up subconsciously to improve myself as a speaker, codifying it, creating frameworks out of it, understanding that, it really boils down to your voice, your energy, your body language. That was a pivotal moment where I understood that it's not just about knowing how to communicate. There are plenty of experts who can't teach what they're an expert in. They just keep that expertise to themselves. But it's taking that journey from this is something that I know a lot about to how do I teach it to someone? How do I not just download information into their brain, because that's not how you become a better communicator, but really guide them along, help them break away from bad communication habits, help them build on impactful communication habits. That was a critical moment where I really stopped being just a public speaker and I became a public speaking coach.
Wow, that's amazing. I was listening in tune, like literally, I felt like there was a wire that wasn't breakable. Thank you so much. I felt that everything you've shared today, not only was it, coming from the heart as I felt it myself, literally your energy has secured that, description of coming from the heart. So thank you so much for doing this. I felt literally treated, not only myself, but I feel we're passing this to the audience that will then make use of it for, however long YouTube will be available, really. But not just YouTube, because this podcast is actually, I'm now opening the brackets and saying it's also foundable on Spotify. So guys, please, see it, check it out. And also in future, become members of our The Future of Skills book club that is launching soon. So be in tune with that. Nausheen, I'm very grateful. Thank you for the gift of content.
Thank you so much for having me here, Nadia. This was a blessing. It was amazing meeting you and amazing having this conversation.
I felt blessed too. Thank you, Han. Thank you so much.